Let's go! Colin Hurley commits to LSU. Comment down below your thoughts on what is actually a pretty historic move right here by LSU. And I want to shout out Joe Sloan and Jordan Arcement. I have actually been following the Colin Hurley story pretty closely once I started hearing that this could be LSU's quarterback for the class of 2025. But he reclassifies, and he is going to be in the class of 2024. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of research I've done, what I like about this young man, and obviously the future of the LSU quarterback room. So as you can see in the background, the guy is unfreaking believably talented, and he was a top 100 recruit for 2025, and he'll probably remain that on all recruiting services for the class of 2024. Boom! I'm looking at you. Yes, you. Right now. Why not a little trivia? We'll answer this question at the end of the video regarding Trinity High School in Florida. But truth be told, I'm super freaking excited about this young man's potential. Let's get to it. Let's go. So, let's talk about what makes this truly unique. And he very well could be the most unique LSU quarterback recruit ever for a lot of reasons. The first thing is he's not from Louisiana. You look, most of LSU's great quarterback recruits that have actually picked LSU were from the state of Louisiana. You know, Jay Russ obviously was from Alabama, and there were a few others out of high school that, you know, chose LSU. But most of the elite quarterback recruits that have picked LSU either were from LSU or had heavy ties from the state of Louisiana. So getting an elite quarterback from Florida, you know, it takes some special stuff from the recruiting staff. And that is pretty much exactly what happened here. So Colin Hurley is a very interesting player in that his mother has been serving overseas in Africa. So what that means is that his mother hasn't really, you know, been able to go on these visits. But when you read about his visit earlier this year to LSU at the Southern game, his mother actually had just landed back in the States. And, you know, you could read this article from 247. It's actually very much into good detail here about how Brian Kelly did a really good job of welcoming his mother to Baton Rouge. And that is obviously very, very important because, you know, if you're overseas and, you know, your kid is going through this very important and tedious process, you know, you want to feel welcome. And, you know, Colin Hurley specifically shouted out some recruiting staffers as well. And that in and of itself is really, really, really freaking spectacular. So, you know, that is honestly, normally the LSU brand, you know, recruits itself, especially with kids in state. This was honestly a lot of the heavy work done by this coaching staff. So honestly, they were spectacular in getting this kid to come to LSU. Now, getting him to sign the dotted line when the recruiting, you know, process actually ends here in a few years, it's going to be a different story. I don't think Florida is going to give up because, well, Colin Hurley has been playing alongside one of the best running backs in the country. You see the play action fake to that running back. His name is Trayon Webb, and I hope I pronounce his first name correctly. Number 3, he is a Florida commit, and he is a special running back. So, you know, Florida is not going to give up. I know Hurley likes Florida as well. So it's going to be important to keep, you know, the volume turned up here on getting Colin Hurley. This kid is like wired different. So you're reading a story here from Jacksonville.com involving his workout regimen. He gets up at 6 in the morning, has a very strict diet, has multiple quarterback coaches, a throwing doctor, if you will, and, you know, former NFLers giving him, you know, some tips. He also has, you know, a very strict actual weightlifting routine. I've seen him pushing a sled with a Major League Baseball player on it. And we get to the most fascinating thing about this young man, which is his age. And I've talked about this a lot. It is something that honestly fascinates me when it comes to just sports science in and of itself. There is so much to be said about how old you are when you're growing up within your peer group. Okay. So Malcolm Gladwell actually did a podcast on this earlier in the year, but there have been millions of studies done on how older people in their respected grade always outperforms, or on average outperforms, younger people in their grades. So what that means is if you are young for your age and you excel, you are overcoming like truly, sports science, psychological science, and a bunch of different things. Colin Hurley is very young. So he did reclassify from the class of 2025 to the class of 2024. So that means he is younger in theory, correct? Well, what's crazy is if he would have just stayed in the class of 2025, he probably would have been one of the younger recruits in the class of 2025 as well. So him reclassifying to go up a grade to 2024 means he is very young, and he will more than likely, I would be hard pressed to find another recruit in the history of LSU football that is younger than what Colin Hurley would be when he actually gets to LSU. I do think it says something that if you're dominant in your own grade, being younger in the class, that really does show me something, right? So in 2018, when he was an 8th grader, he actually played some for Trinity. And then as a 9th grader, he led them to a state championship game, which is truly freaking incredible. So this guy has been a really, really good player for his age at the high school level. And just to be one of the best recruits at that age is really impressive. Boom! I'm looking at you. Yes, you. I just hit the microphone. I'm not smooth at all. Colin Hurley smooth. This guy, it is just breathtaking some of the throws this guy was making. And this actually is his highlights from the freshman, his freshman year as a 14-year-old. Once again, only 14 years of age. That is still very young, and you just see some absolute darts. Now, before I actually show you his stats, which I think will surprise some of you, I want to share a few things that I find to be very interesting about his recruitment. As many of you know, I do reach out to coaches for second opinions, and I had been studying Colin Hurley for a little while now, and you just see some dimes. Some of these throws into these windows, you just don't see normal high school quarterbacks make. So understand that him leading a team, and there was a really good clip I saw earlier from, his coach talking about the state championship run. As a 14-year-old, it is breathtaking, right? So if you were to look at this, just this tape, you would think that this was a high-flying spread offense, because you do see a lot of these throws at a shotgun. You see a lot of professional concepts. You see a lot of these throws made outside the hashes and on a line. But the truth is, Trinity is a heavy run-based offense. They run the football. And when you look at Colin Hurley's stats, you're going to see something that may or may not surprise you. So these are his stats from his, according to Max Preps here, from his freshman 14-year-old season. And quite honestly, it's impressive, right? You see some games where, the performance was flat out rough. You see some games where he didn't even, throw the football 15 times during a game. But there are heavy asterisks next to it. Like we mentioned, obviously the age is pretty impressive. But remember, Florida, their running back commitment, Trayon Webb, is their offense, right? They run a lot of wildcat formation stuff, which is obviously a direct snap to the running back. The second thing is it's not just him. They also have a running back by the name of Darnell Rogers who takes a lot of the carries as well. And he also is a very, very good player. He's not as highly regarded, but I do think offers are going to start rolling in for him. So, you have to look at the freshman stats once again with a heavy grain of salt. Now you look at this year's stats, you see a 1 for 6 for 20 yards and a pick. That was, I actually looked at that tape. It was pouring rain in that game, or at least in the second half. Now, I will say I did see some mistakes that Colin Hurley has made, but once again, he is super-duper young, and he is not the focal point of the offense. Remember, if you are in high school, and you have a top running back prospect, well, you want to run that running back prospect because obviously the defenses aren't as good. You don't need to actually air the football out. How do you interpret that? Well, I'll put it this way. You want to see him making these absolutely positively elite throws, right? The most important thing if a quarterback is this young, you just want to see the ridiculous potential that he has. He's not much of a runner. He does have the ability to run. I think I saw him clocked at a 4.8 40, but he's very much like Bryce Young in that he wants to throw the football, right? There are opportunities where he can run, but he is a pure thrower. So for me, I do think he has some dual threat capabilities as far as like being a threat as a runner, but this is not a dual threat quarterback in the mold of, let's say, a Johnny Manziel who's going to go out there and rush for 1,000 yards because he doesn't need to, right? He is such an elite thrower and processor at this point that sometimes I felt as if he did hold on to the football too long. But what I will tell you is this. His final year tape is going to be very telling for me because Webb won't be there next year. Obviously, he'll be at Florida next year. So next year, we will see what that offense is actually going to look like without, some of these very elite classmates, if you will. So it's not this throw. Obviously, this throw is really good, but I want you to see this throw right here, okay? So he gets the snap, and look at when he's actually deciding to throw this football. The wide receiver is not open yet. Look at when he is anticipating this throw over the top, and notice the ball placement, okay? God, do I get the camera, cut it off? But notice the ball placement, okay? He catches it in stride, okay? And he got sucked up, which he shouldn't have. That was a great throw, all right? It's just ridiculous. I mean, I'm in awe. I really am in awe of this kid. This is as loaded and as highly touted as any LSU quarterback room I've ever seen in terms of 4 different top 150 and honestly top 100. I mean, Ricky Collins is really good. Top 100 QBs. That's like what we see Alabama do. That's what Ohio State does. And I've seen Colin Hurley say, hey, there's this kid in 2024, Dylan Raiola, who's like the clear-cut number one guy. And I just hear Colin Hurley say, I want to compete. I want to beat, the Dylan Raiolas at the Elite 11. So it's very interesting. So we're going to be doing more breakdowns on Hurley. Once again, I will say this. In these kinds of games and footage, you want to see the elite throws. You want to see the throws in tight windows. You want to see the back shoulder throws. But next year, when you look at his high school film, you're going to want to see everything put together. And I didn't show some of the interceptions and some of the sacks because I just quite frankly don't give a rip about that at this point. But next year, you're going to want to see everything really become even more fluid. The stats get, a little bit better. And, man, this guy's a lot of fun to watch. I mean, it truly is fun. And, comment down below your thoughts on today's video. It is Power Hour LSU. Bam! And tonight, some of that, some steak hibachi. Let's go.